Chris Lee of Southeastern 14 here, joined by my good friend Trey Wallace as we react for the second time today. I've done this live once already, and boy, that was fun for a number of reasons. To Nick Saban's retirement, I think news that floored us all. Trey, thank you for joining us at a time where I don't even want to know. Like, your phone must be going dead with all the texts and the calls you're getting, first of all. And thank you for joining us.
So, we text. We have a group text. Me and you and a good buddy of ours, David Chengus, and I got back from Houston. It was supposed to be time to unplug and relax for about 4 or 5 days and just soak in the season. You know what I mean? Just like chill out. Don't open the computer. We have to do that in our business. Nick Saban decided this afternoon, screw your vacation, Trey Wallace, and your break. You better start getting to work. And just an incredible, I don't know, we'll get into it. Like, we knew this was going to come in the next 2 years. I was thinking after next season. But the fact that we're here, Chris, and it's a reality, I think that I've had coaches blowing me up, assistant coaches. I've talked to a couple of coaches in the Southeastern Conference, a couple of coaches, Power 5 level. It's a moment that I don't think anybody was prepared for, even though they knew it was coming.
Yeah. I talked to someone this afternoon who's pretty well dialed into that program, and I just said, "Were you shocked?" And he said, I think, and I'm trying to remember exactly what this guy told me, but I think they thought that either his 75th birthday or winning another national title or maybe something, or no, it was either 75th birthday or just got exhausted by NIL, or maybe something that was along the lines of a personal emergency. I have no idea what the driver was, but that was this guy's take on it. This guy's pretty well plugged into things, and has been right on a bunch of stuff. And so that was sort of the vibe in Tuscaloosa, in and around that football program that he had perceived.
It's amazing to think that, I know you've heard this, and I've talked with some folks too. It's amazing that Nick Saban was talking with potential candidates about.
Yes, I heard that too yesterday.
Position yesterday, and I was even told this morning. If people are watching this on Thursday or Friday, whenever, Wednesday morning, Nick Saban was talking to potential candidates about the open spot, just like he does every year, looking towards the future. Defensive coordinator, let's not forget, Kevin Steele is no longer going to be around. So he was talking to candidates. And I always figured it was going to happen the way that it happened today. Nick Saban and Chris Lowe have a really great relationship. Chris Lowe, a great reporter. I always kind of figured that, and I was kind of joking with some folks at the SEC title game, like, this is going to be something where Nick just texts Chris and be like, "Hey, I'm retiring. You can put it out. There's not going to be a statement." And to show you how, I'm not going to say not prepared, because Alabama's always prepared for things. But Alabama did not release a statement about Nick Saban retiring until 2 hours and 45 minutes after it was reported on social media. Alabama finally released a statement.
Wow.
That said, in part, I'll say to people, University of Alabama has been a very special place to Terry and me. That's his wife. We have enjoyed every minute of our 17 years being the head coach at Alabama, as well as becoming a part of the Tuscaloosa community. It is not just about how many games we won and lost, but it's about the legacy and how we went about it. We always tried to do the right way. The goal was always to help players create more value for their future, be the best player they could be, and be more successful in life because they are a part of the program. Hopefully, we have done that. We will always consider Alabama our home.
Hold that thought. I've got a follow-up question for you. Want to remind people the video brought to you by BetOnline. With NFL playoffs around the corner, NBA season in full swing, BetOnline has you covered with all the up-to-the-second odds, news, and scores with additional lines trends on both mobile and desktop. You can access the world's best wagering information online anytime. Head there today, get in the action, see the updated odds. Remember to use the promo code BELIEVE. That is BLEAV. Get your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online when the game starts. Okay, here's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
That seems so un-Nick Saban-like. In other words, here's what I mean. Like, Nick Saban is so detail-oriented.
Yeah.
That the fact that it came out that much later, and like you would think, like if I said, how's Nick Saban going to retire? I would think maybe Chris Lowe or somebody gets the heads up, but then there's university press release that comes out 5 minutes later to give Chris his day in the sun or whatever. And then the fact that it was like that and that abrupt and even the statement being sort of abrupt,
I think
begs some questions.
They always have the detailed history and everything that, this is what Nick Saban did. This is where Nick Saban was, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm sure Josh Maxson, those folks in Alabama have had that done for a while whenever, that would come out. But it's the statement part, it's statement from Greg Byrne, the AD. It's a statement from Nick Saban, which I don't doubt one bit. That was Nick Saban's statement. That wasn't something that was written by a publicist or anything like that. Or, ghost writing, how that goes. That was 100% Nick Saban. But the way that it happened caught me off guard. I didn't think this would be some NASCAR thing. And if you watch NASCAR, you understand what I'm saying, where a driver announces he's going to retire after this season that's coming up. So every track that they go to, or like a baseball player, like Derek Jeter and whatnot.
Like the Jeter retirement tour,
right,
or the Mariano Rivera.
Probably,
yeah.
Probably a better understanding on this show with Jeter, maybe compared to NASCAR. But who knows, though? But getting gifts out at every single stadium that he goes to. Nick Saban didn't want that. Nick Saban wasn't going to have that. He wasn't going to go pose at midfield with the opposing coach, before every game. But I think today's announcement, how it went down, there were staff members that didn't know. There were staff members that found out 5 minutes before Nick Saban went in and spoke with the players. And a lot of that has to do with, excuse me for the noise, a lot of that has to do with you want to keep it in-house, you know what I mean? You don't want it to get out. Not saying an assistant coach would, but assistant coach might call his agent and be like, hey, man, look.
Hey, that's impossible to keep quiet. You right. Even hint to anybody, and it's going to touch off everything.
I would go as far to say, and Jimmy Sexton has been Nick Saban's agent for a very long time. I think it's since he entered the college football game, if I'm not mistaken, at Michigan State as a head coach. I would even go as far to say that maybe Jimmy didn't even know until the last week or so, because Saban probably didn't know. You know what I mean? Like this kind of feels like, and Nick Saban's a different cat, okay? But you don't go from interviewing potential candidates to saying, all right, he hangs up with one candidate. It's like, you know what? Damn, like I don't really feel like doing this anymore. I'm done. Let me text Chris Lowe and be like, hey, I'm out. You know what I mean? Like, so I think the timeline will be very interesting over the next couple of days. I was going back and forth. I'm interested in your thoughts on this. I was going back and forth with a head coach, and I said, I don't see Nick Saban standing up at a podium and answering questions for 20 minutes from the media about why he made the decision to do it. Like and maybe I'm wrong on that, but like I just do you think something like that? Do you think Nick's going to do that? Because here's your timeline. You're not going to interfere and do it this weekend with Tua playing if you're Alabama. You can't do it on Monday, Martin Luther King Day. The only time you'd be able to really do it is like Friday or maybe Tuesday. And if anything, it would be more or less of like a celebration, of Nick, a thank you on the way out type of deal. Like, how do you think it goes down? Because I can go forth on the press conference angle.
My question to you was, and I've been tied up with family stuff all afternoon in between doing videos and stuff. So
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, like, when's the press conference? Because that was my next question. That's like what I'm waiting for is I want to see this thing and what he says. So I guess you're telling me as we're doing this, there's not been one scheduled.
There has not been one scheduled.
That's interesting.
The only thing Alabama's put out is there's Nick Saban's statement. Miss Terry put out a statement on the Nick's Kids Foundation Facebook page, thanking everybody. But the only people, excuse that one, the only people that were, it seemed like they got announced on was Greg Byrne and Nick Saban. And once they put that together, they were able to go. But, surprisingly enough, they haven't released anything when it comes to, I was joking with a coach. I was like, they have this succession plan somewhere locked up in a vault,
with the Coca-Cola recipe or whatever, right?
Deep inside the territory of Tuscaloosa, underneath some kind of ground, and there's probably an oatmeal pie in there, and there's probably a piece of paper saying this is how it's going to play out when I'm done. I'm sure that is being looked at now, how to put together an event. Like, the big thing that stands out to me is like, yes, and I've spoken with folks over the years about this. Alabama, they know about, how to put on an event. Like they know what they will do when it comes time. Hey, we'll do it here and we'll do it this way, this way, this way.
Yeah.
Like press conference wise and the timing of it. I give Nick Saban a lot of credit. And I know I'm kind of rambling here. It's because it's just everything going on. Nick Saban waited until Wednesday afternoon at 4:00 Central Time to release this statement. That gave Michigan enough time to win a title on Monday night. It gave Harbaugh enough time to celebrate and bask in it on Tuesday. And then Saban decided on a Wednesday, So, if Alabama, and here's the other thing too, getting back to the leaks, Chris, if Alabama wanted to dominate the news cycle over the last 5 days, and that's another thing too, how about, I think that nobody really knew about this. This thing would have been out Monday during the college football national championship pregame or postgame or during the broadcast, something, if Alabama wanted to dominate the headlines.
Yeah.
But they decided not to, you know what I mean? Or Nick didn't know, at the time. So that just kind of goes, I think that's another example, Chris, of what we're getting at is the timing and who knew when and when did Nick actually decide, hey, I want to retire.
See, the thing that surprises me about this, like 10 years ago, I wasn't convinced that he wasn't a bot. I mean, it was so methodical, and that's a joke, of course. But
I know.
The last few years, he had seemed more human and approachable and emotional, and he started becoming less of just this dude who wins to more of a human being that you really felt like you were starting to get to know and really liked and respected. And with that self-awareness, I guess that's why I understand the reasons why he didn't want to do it, but he's got to know his place in the game and that people are going to want to talk and ask questions. I guess that's the thing to me that seems a little incomplete as we do this on a Wednesday night.
Two things that stand out to me when it comes to timing. First off, and I wrote about this about an hour after it was done, transfer portal is now open for 30 days for players on Alabama's roster. I think it's starting whenever Alabama made it official. So sometime Wednesday night when I don't know if you have to fax it in like a national letter of intent or something, but once that happens, Alabama players have 30 days. This is going to, I spoke with a head coach about this. If folks remember the 30 for 30 documentary Pony Express about SMU, when they got the death penalty, you saw in there the video of all the coaches flocking to Dallas. That's what it's going to be like over the next 2 weeks. It is going to be, I feel horrible for the control tower at the Tuscaloosa Regional Airport because there are going to be coaches flying in from all across the country, big time schools that think that they have a chance at getting some of these Alabama players to sign with them. And that's another thing that stands out to me when it comes to timing is because you're going to have the portal activity. You've also got kids that are going to have to be enrolled in school. I think if I'm not mistaken, and don't hold me to this, the announcement today from Saban, I don't think they had started classes back yet. So it wouldn't be held against the players if they attended a class. because NCAA rules are so stupid that if you attend
Yeah.
one class,
Yeah.
that counts towards
You're
the
locked in.
semester. You're locked in. So I, if I'm not mistaken, Alabama has not started classes yet, so it gives players a time to look around. The other thing here is the NIL part of this and where we are as a sport in college football. And I think that goes a long ways when it comes to what Nick Saban has probably just, has decided to do. You don't get a break now on this job. I've had many
Yeah.
coaches tell me, this. I've had many coaches, assistant coaches tell me, man, I need an NFL job. I got to get off to the NFL. And I've told you this story. T. Martin, former wide receivers coach at Tennessee, former quarterback and whatnot. He told me, along with a couple other coaches, that he had to get out of the college game. Everything was changing so much with NFL, NIL, and recruiting. He didn't have a break. He didn't get a break.
Yeah.
These coaches don't get a break, folks. Nick Saban came home from losing a semifinal game, had a night off, had to be back in the office to prevent players from entering the portal and talk them out of it, and handle the rest of recruiting because Alabama had that 6-day window after the semifinal. So what I'm getting at is that if there was ever a time to leave, I think it would have been now. I think with the playoffs and the way that we're going next year with 12 teams, even though Alabama had a great roster coming back next year, still a lot of unknowns, and when you look at it, when you really look at it right now, I think Nick Saban was just tired of dealing with it, man. And Chris, going back to it again, and I know we've been harping on this, but the fact that he was interviewing potential candidates,
Yeah.
that to me, I'll leave this question at this. I always thought Nick Saban, not make it public, but for the kids that were committing out of high school or the transfer portal players or whatnot, kind of give them a heads up. Hey, look, I'm not going to be around for 4 years. Like, you're going to commit here and come play here. And Nick Saban just always felt like that guy to me that would do that and let the players know. And not whatever. There's still another signing period to come, but in general, and that's not a shot at Nick Saban. I just thought that would be how he would go out. Not just, the text message to Chris Lowe or the phone call makes sense. But the other side of that, the letting 17, 18-year-old kids know that, hey, I'm not going to be around for 4 or 5 years. I think that was something that was interesting to me. But again, Chris, in the transfer portal in the NIL world, I think you can throw all that out the window because really, what does it matter anymore? Besides Nick Saban's word.
Yeah, and look, it caught everybody off guard. Funny story this afternoon when I'm doing my thing, like my 9-year-old son's getting off the bus. We got to go live and do something. It's not like I'm sitting here. I'm hearing my kid yelling in the back of the, "Hey, where's mom and dad?" And
don't worry about it.
Bad host or a bad dad? I chose bad dad, and he's about to go out for baseball cards. He'll forget all about this later.
Oh, you're good, man. Not a
so
bad.
Anyway,
not well, a bad. I think look, it's everybody. You know what I mean? Like nobody's. I'd imagine Chris Lowe wasn't prepared for it. When he so.
Well, and here's what I'm getting at. Okay, we're doing this. We're all just kind of, it's in the middle of our day. We got other stuff going on. We're all shell shocked with that alone, right? But the one thing that hit me later after I talked for 40 minutes or whatever was like, we say this is a shock. It still feels like something happened that triggered this that was very sudden, given how buttoned down and prepared he is for everything.
Yes.
But at the same time, the guy who, over the last 20 years, there's no coach who got to the podium and with his words and body language just screamed, "I hate dealing with the media," more so than Nick Saban did over most of his career. Fair? And what did he do this year? When a time when he's got no time for anybody or anything, he's doing a show with Pat McAfee. So maybe it was just out there in front of us the whole time.
I think there was a part of it that was out there the whole time. I do. I think that, but I also don't think appearing on ESPN once a week for 20 minutes on a Thursday is saying, hey, I'm done. I just think, I don't know what it was. Maybe he started doing yoga with Lane Kiffin and started relaxing himself a little bit more. I just think he started enjoying it. And look, Nick Saban enjoys coaching college football. I think he allowed the public to see a different side of him. And that could have been for a lot of reasons. That could have been because of his wife, Miss Terry, saying, hey, look, you sound really grouchy in the media. Like she said that before, like in different terms. But I think overall, I don't think Nick Saban came into this season thinking this was it. I don't. I think that, especially not the way that he's handled the season. I think, in personal opinion, this is one of Nick Saban's greatest jobs coaching in his entire his entire career. I think this season was a stamp on his career. He didn't win the title, and that's fine. He's won enough titles, but he won an SEC title, and he broke Georgia, which seems to be the case in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And let's all not forget, after that Texas game, what was everybody saying? Well, you know what? It's time for Nick Saban.
He's done.
The game has passed him by. He's not the same coach anymore. Okay, what happened? They go to South Florida. He starts Ty Simpson and Buckner, whatever, whichever one, but Buckner started. But then he was doing it to prove a point, in my opinion. He was doing it to say, okay, you guys don't know all what you're talking about. Okay, you want to see these other guys? I know we'll win the game. I'll give you these other guys. And then it was like, what do you do that Monday? Jalen Milroe's our starter. No looking back. He's our starter. The guy didn't play a snap. So I just think overall, this season, 2024, should be remembered. For Alabama fans, it would be remembered a lot. He at least went out with a title and SEC championship. But to me, with all the discrepancies and talent that roster had this year, and they really were. They had problems on that roster. And I don't think it was development. I just think this was like the first year where like a transition hit, Chris.
Yeah.
And Alabama was struggling to figure out the transition part of it. And how to go with it without a Bryce Young or, a defense that had 11 starters in the NFL, an offensive line that 5 of them will be drafted this year. I will say that Nick Saban, what he did and how he did it with Milroe, without can everybody in the country name Alabama starting running back right now?
No. Okay, this is we're thinking alike, because this is where I was going to go next, Trey.
Okay. Yeah.
I know all the talk, all the 5 stars, they have as much talent as anybody. I heard that before the season, heard it during the season. I'm sure that'll still be the narrative on the season after the season. And yes, they had 5 stars everywhere. But I watched them, and I said this early in the year.
Yeah.
There are 5 stars, and they are dudes. And they had dudes. Like, you've got a secondary out there some years trying to cover Devontae Smith and Mechie and Jerry Jeudy and all those guys. Waddle. You got a Tua back there. You got a Derrick Henry or an Ingram in the backfield. You got your starting corners and safeties are usually, 70. Your starting defensive backfield, usually 75% of them are going to the. And look, they had guys in spots. Right. They had Kool-Aid McKinstry. They had Dallas Turner. I'm not saying they didn't have talent, but especially on that offensive side, you didn't see what they've had. Anything like what they've had the past few years. And he took that team, which I think some of his teams in the past would have beat this one by 14 to 20 points.
I think 40. Those are damn good rosters.
Maybe so. I mean, and he's still, if they can get off a snap against Michigan, I think they're beating Washington.
Yes.
And maybe he's throwing his retirement down then and there when he's taking he wouldn't do that, but you know what I mean. I think there was a vast difference, and he still almost came out on top.
If his defense, and it's crazy to think, if his defense doesn't give up that to Michigan, late in that game in the fourth quarter, Alabama's beating the brakes off Washington. I mean, you say the Jalen Milroe snap. I say into the fourth quarter. Michigan, pushing this thing to overtime. So it's one of those things where you look at the roster and, even I had a hard time this year, think, okay, who's the starting running back today? You know what I mean? And it's true, they talent wise, they had the talent, but there was just something missing from a cohesive group. And they also, and you hit on it, they didn't have Derrick Henry back there. They didn't have, and I'm just coming up with the name because of all the time.
And there, you know what the biggest difference too? We didn't even hit the offensive line. That's where the biggest difference was.
Right. And for them to come out and say, what was the big thing this year? Oh, we're changing up our game plan. We're going back old school. We're going to run it down your throat. That lasted for about 3 games. 3 games, and then they figured out, well, okay, we don't have the offensive line, and we sure as hell don't have the running backs right now to do what we thought we were going to do. We got to, after the USF game, we got to get this thing to Jalen Milroe and let him do his thing with Isaiah Bond on the outside and Jermaine Burton and whatnot. And I think that was the most surprising thing to me out of everything as we look back on it is a lot of people maybe can go back on the season and rethink it. Alabama literally had to change everything about what they were going to do offensively after the USF game. That's hard to do. You brought in Tommy Reese to run one thing, and 3.5, 4 games into the season, you're running something completely different with a quarterback. Let's also be honest, with a quarterback that most people around the country didn't think could get the job done and wondered why the hell was he the starting quarterback and why isn't Ty Simpson in there? That's what everybody thought about Jalen Milroe. Not everyone. I'm not trying to throw everybody together, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so, Milroe ends up being what was it, 5th in the Heisman race, something like that. And they go knock off, the one thing Nick Saban did in his final season as head coach was knock off old Kirby and kill that winning streak that they had and take take an SEC championship, have a shot at playing for a national title in the semifinals. That's one thing he did on his way out was, I got you, Kirby. You ain't gonna be able to beat me again. I got you on the way out the door now.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I want to end in just a minute. What's that?
Lane can't go back. I'm sure Lane's like, damn it, I don't have another shot to beat Saban. What am I?
Well, I want to get to Lane Kiffin in a minute, but this is something interesting somebody told me tonight, and I hadn't really thought of this. The thing that Nick Saban was scared to death of, and remember, he's a defensive-minded coach first, was mobile quarterbacks.
Correct.
The thought of a play breaking down, you having everything, and then a guy scrambling just terrified him. And that got passed down to other guys in his coaching tree, Kirby Smart. So Nick would a lot of times put a spy on an opposing quarterback, and that filtered down to Kirby Smart. So when they play Georgia this year, I'd have to go back and check the film, I guess, but just taking it at his word, what did Kirby do? He spied Jalen Milroe, and got beat. What did Michigan do? They said, screw it. We're going to play our coverage on our end, and we're going to handle you with our pass rushers, and we're not going to put a spy on you. They didn't have guys open downfield. Michigan got it done with the 4-man pass rush a lot of times, and we know the story. I just thought that was interesting that, that the influence carried that far. But
it did, and it's crazy to think. People learn from Nick Saban, man. I think that's the best way to put it. I don't know how easy to say it. People learn from Nick Saban second half adjustments massive in the way that Nick Saban did it as well. You might have, there were times where, last season, Tennessee and LSU got Alabama in the fourth quarter. But it didn't happen very often at Alabama where somebody was going to get you in the second half. You know what I mean? It was always Nick Saban's going to make the adjustments at halftime, figure out where we're getting beat. Okay, now let's go take care of business. But for Alabama last season, they ran into the Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt connection where Hyatt was just, Roger Rabbit on the field. And then then you got to follow that up, and you had to go to Baton Rouge and you play Jaden Daniels and just crazy games. But then you see it this season where everybody thought this was the year Kiffin would beat Nick Saban, and the talent was there. Sark got him, but that was about it. And to think, how much of a transition he made from last year to this year. And you got to think too, guys. I mean, he brought in Tommy Rees, brought in Kevin Steele. And let's be honest about Kevin Steele. Kevin Steele was there to be a motivator for players and do a little recruiting. He wasn't running the darn defense. I think he's still collecting paychecks as his time as a 3-week head coach in Knoxville. But all of that changes now. And I know we're about to get into that, but all of that changes, you're going to hire an offensive coordinator to be an offensive coordinator at Alabama. You're going to hire a defense coordinator to be a defensive coordinator at Alabama. The philosophy on college football and how things are going to happen, everything changes in this one moment. And that's why, it's not just Nick Saban retiring. We have seen how a college football program should be run from top to bottom. And everybody might not have agreed with Nick Saban with his punishments for either players getting arrested, how he handled himself off the field with the media or during his job, whatever. You didn't like Nick Saban because he beat your team. Like, that was it. And he recruited 5 stars like crazy. And, as the old Blue Chips movie had to say, there was always, friends of the program. You know what I mean? Like you did, and that goes over. Like, you just didn't agree. But at the end of the day, you look back and you look at the one game that I'll leave it this part of this. One game that stand out to me was the whole Lane Kiffin, Nick Saban thing this year. And the build up to that game was, this is going to be Kiffin's turn to beat him. This is going to be Kiffin's turn to beat him. The talk, okay, Nick Saban's probably done. This is going to be it for Saban and blah, blah. What'd Saban do? He just went out there and they just beat up on Ole Miss. And, that was the game to me where you saw the Alabama program go from here to here during the 2023 season. Mm-hmm. And I think, I just didn't think there was anything else for Nick Saban to accomplish at Alabama anymore and in college football. I think he'll be probably the new, I don't want to say Lee Corso because that's a shot at Lee Corso, but I think he'll be the new pundit, on a show, to fly. He'll do the Dan Mullen thing where he flies out on a Saturday morning, to a site and flies right back home afterwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's different for Dan Mullen. I'm just using him as an example, but that's how it's going to be. And he'll do a couple appearances, probably during the week from his Jupiter Island grand magical escape with his floating pool in the background and his golf course and whatnot. And I just felt like it was the right time. And as crazy as it sounds, and I know we're about to get into a coaching search here in just a second, as crazy as it sounds, Nick Saban, and I don't know if they've canceled it or not, but tomorrow he usually does a weekly appearance with Pat McAfee.
Yeah.
Like, the
if
journal,
Pat McAfee, you are begging him to come on with you. How much can I put in this hand to make it worth your while, Nick?
let me tell you, we have some colleagues in this business that are really uppity up. You know what I mean? If Nick Saban, he'll probably cancel it. I don't know. But if Nick Saban were to go on Pat McAfee tomorrow, and that's how he announces what happened and what went into it, you're going to have some folks in this business lose their minds, and I'm here for it.
Hey, you know what? The thing is, people that are close to him say he is hilarious.
Yes.
And I think that's one thing in retirement I'm looking forward to is seeing that side of him that people talked about so much. I bet he is. I think Nick Saban being on TV or whatever to me as an analyst would be appointment TV.
I got to spend numerous times with Nick Saban behind the scenes in Mobile he would come down for his charity event every year in Mobile, Alabama. Big donor base down there and whatnot too. But he would always come down to be at the convention center in Mobile, and the press would always get 10 minutes, 15 minutes of his time before he would make his way out. But there would also be times where we're all just kind of just hanging around until he goes out there and speaks and whatnot. And he would crack jokes. And, there's even a joke I can't even say on here. It's funny, but he was always very personable. He respected everybody. He might not agree with everybody, but he respected everybody. He might not like the media in a sense of the overall landscape back in the day, but he was a really funny dude. And he's going to be funny. And I think you're going to see a more open Nick, and he's going to be able to joke about Lane and Kirby and Shane Beamer and Dan, whoever he wants. He's going to be able to have fun now. He'll be able to crack a joke. He might even be able to say the word ass on television or something. You know what I mean? Just things you don't see out of him now. Yeah. I'm excited for him to be able to just go enjoy that while he can sit back and collect his millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of revenue from a Mercedes or a Ferrari dealership he's got. I'm sure Alabama's going to be paying him for the rest of his life. And things will work out for him. So now it's up to Alabama to go find the coach. And you know what? I would rather be the coach after the coach that takes over for Nick Saban compared to the guy that's about to be hired by Greg Byrne, who did release a statement, I might add. Alabama's Greg Byrne said this tonight, Chris. Brief statement on social media. This is on Wednesday night. He said, it's crazy reading this from Greg Byrne in Alabama, talking about a football coach. As with any coaching search, our goal is to be thorough but expedient. Our ideal candidate will be strong in recruiting and relationship building, player development, excel in X's and O's, and have the overall ability to lead this historic program. There will be plenty of rumors out there during this process. Next time I talk publicly will be to announce our new head coach. If you don't hear it from me, don't believe it. Roll Tide.
Wow. Okay. The obvious question. Well, let me put you on the spot a little bit. Either Dan Lanning or Lane Kiffin are the field. Which are you taking?
I knew that you would put those two together. Dan Lanning, Lane Kiffin, or the field?
Not as a group. In other words, it's either going to be one of those two guys or it's going to be
Lanning or
8 billion people in the world.
Lanning and Kiffin are the field. I get what you're saying. Because you put one of them in there. I'm going to go Lanning and Kiffin.
I think that's the bet I would take too.
And not because of Lane Kiffin, because you threw Lane Kiffin in there. I think Dan Lanning, because the others.
You think it's Lanning?
Well, that would be my first phone call. That'd be my first phone call immediately. Dan Lanning.
I think I would take Lanning above Kiffin. I just
look.
Kiffin is a good coach. Kiffin is finally. I always thought he was a guy that fell upward into jobs he didn't deserve. He's kind of started getting close to be able to write checks that his mouth could cash, but I still think. I don't know what I still think I don't know if overgrown frat boy is the right term for it, but there's still like something to me seems a little bit off for replacing Lane or replacing Nick Saban with Lane Kiffin in that regard.
I think you think, and I think we're on the same page when I say this. I think you still see Lane Kiffin as the guy on social media trolling folks.
Yes.
The guy that sending out pictures from a fishing boat talking about, and I know that's how they do recruiting. And I know Lane really well. I think a lot of people see him that way, and it's because he portrays himself in that way sometimes. Yeah. And that's okay. He's social media king, transfer portal king. Now, I will say this. and I wouldn't have said this 2 years ago. Lane Kiffin is a different guy. He is a different human being than he was 4 years ago,
Yeah.
5 years ago, 3 years ago. This is a guy who has really taken the right steps to help himself out when it comes to this game of college football, being a head coach, representing himself, not doing stupid stuff that can be talked about in inner circles between me and you and other media members and not for public consumption. Nothing crazy, but just stories that we can't, really share. We don't want to. But I think he has done, I've written about it 3 times now since he's been back at Ole Miss in different chapters of his life and where he is at now. I think he's done a hell of a job turning himself around. And I think that I think the flirtation with Auburn last year, that was real because Auburn's a different job than Ole Miss. Let's just be honest with each other. It is, but Ole Miss stepped up to the game. Auburn was ready for it, but Ole Miss, they stepped it up. When it came to investing in college football, and NIL changed everything, by the way. But I think Lane Kiffin, they'd have to really sit him down and say, "Hey man, look, you ain't doing any more of
Some
this.
things won't fly here that might have flown at Ole Miss.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Keith Carter will let him get away with a lot of stuff at Oxford that Greg Byrne will say, buddy, you are following the GOAT. This stuff won't fly at Alabama." But I will say this, and I know landing here in just a second. I will say this. As much as it's going to make things weird around Alabama's going to have to change their way that they look at themselves as a program. They are not a mixed program anymore. It is not and I don't mean this in a mean or derogatory way, it's not the uppity up of college football anymore. It's not. It's not. It's not a media relations department that, will rarely get back to you at times over certain things. It's not, Nick Saban not going on social media or doing what I think everybody knows what I say when I'm talking about Alabama, a different program with Nick Saban as the leader compared to you look around college football and the way things have changed now. And look at Dan Lanning or look at Mike Norvell at Florida State, or even look at Dabo and stuff like that. I just think they have to take on a new perception. And I think it's going to take a while for the folks at Alabama. Let me rephrase it. It's going to take a long time. I'm talking 2, 3, 4 years. You got to remember, there are folks in that building that have been around there since Nick Saban took that job. There has been an old school way of handling things at Alabama for 17 years, however long.
Yeah.
That's going to change starting tomorrow. It's going to change. And there are going to be folks that aren't cut out for what the new Alabama is going to have to be. And I think it's going to be a culture shock for people. It really is. You've ran things a certain way for so many years. Now you got to figure out, and I think your dog even agrees with me. Now
he's fired up.
I know. Now you have to figure out, Chris, how you're going to run the program. And who is the right guy to run it in the way that you'd accept it, but you also got to let the new coach do it the way he wants to do it.
By the way, overgrown frat boy might have been a harsh way of putting Lane Kiffin now, and I don't want to unfairly attack, but you know what I mean by that. I
think everybody does because a lot of people go off the past. A lot of people have a lot of people don't know the inner workings of the Lane Kiffin now. And if you don't, I urge you to go read my pieces from last year.
I've seen them.
Or this year. It was in the spring of this year. Of how Lane Kiffin has endeared himself to his family. He's a father that's handling duties in Oxford and in California at the same time. He's a head coach that cares for his players, but he's going to have a good time at the same time as being a college football head coach. And you have to do that nowadays. You have to. If you're going to interact with 18 to 21-year-old kids, you know what? You have to find different ways of doing that, man. And Nick Saban in Alabama had the allure. I had a coach tell me tonight, NIL, you might have other schools offering you a crap load of more of NIL, but the allure of playing for Nick Saban was the reason why you went to Alabama. Sure, you can make some money when you got there, but it's the same thing that Kirby's doing now at Georgia, where you want to go play for these guys because you know what the next level can be. In Alabama, it's going to be a real quick change of scenery within the next 3 weeks because I think they have a new head coach hired. I'm going to say within the next 2 weeks they have a new head coach hired.
I bet sooner than that.
I wrote earlier a week. I'm just kind of giving myself more room. I think I honestly think it's I don't know. I know Jimmy Sexton will have his list. Trace Armstrong will have his list. They're all going to be trying to get to Greg Byrne and talk to him and blah, blah, blah. I'm sure Jimmy Sexton's posted up at his condo down in Tuscaloosa right now with 5 different phones laying on a table and, fielding phone calls.
Sounds a little bit like your life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Fielding phone calls from his top talent around the country saying, hey, I'm interested. Hey, I'm interested. And by the way, Jimmy Sexton is going to present a list to Greg Byrne. It's probably got about 4 or 5 names on it. That's about it. Jimmy knows. Jimmy's been – let's not – and if folks don't know who Jimmy Sexton is, just go Google Jimmy Sexton, and you'll know that he is the most powerful man in college football from an agent-wise. He runs college football. Jimmy Sexton will technically hire the new head coach at Alabama. Let's be honest. Like, he's going to place the next head coach at Alabama, just like he placed Jimbo at Texas A&M and Mike at FSU, and the list can go on and on and on and on. So the field is very interesting to me because what really is the field? We're not talking about Lincoln Riley. We're not talking about Marcus Freeman. Somebody was floating out there, James Franklin. What has James Franklin done at Penn State to make him worthy to be the Alabama head coach? The guy can't win in the Big Ten. I'm sorry. He can't win in the Big Ten. Jimbo's on a ranch. He ain't coaching again. Mike Norvell of Florida State would be the other name. I think Mike Norvell would be the other name. And isn't it crazy, Chris, that we haven't brought up that one name that everybody thought it would be for the last 5 years?
Sark?
Oh no. Keep going.
My brain is fried today.
Mr. Dabo. Mr. Dabo.
Oh, well, yes, of course. That one did come up this afternoon.
It's kind of interesting that I've received about 80 different text messages since Nick Saban resigned, and maybe one of them had Dabo Swinney's name in it.
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy.
And it's not, and I wasn't asking or whatnot. It was just people.
Well, Dabo Swinney did not adapt well to the NIL era.
No. And he got Dabo Swinney at the same time Nick Saban showed a new Nick Saban and a new person this year. Dabo Swinney did the same thing at Clemson, but not for the better.
Yeah, and the guy that beat him all to the punch was Lane Kiffin.
Exactly. I think Dabo Swinney, and I like Dabo, nice guy, good football coach, but he kind of came off as an ass this year.
Yeah,
and he didn't help because Chris, if they don't win down the stretch, man, you're going into next season and Clemson folks, if they win 7-8 games next year, Clemson folks be ready to move on, start a new area. So I don't know if Dabo is the guy right now for Alabama. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think? Like 2 years ago, if Saban would have retired 2 years ago, would Dabo be the shoe-in right now?
He would have to be ahead of Lane Kiffin because Lane Kiffin had not matured a little more at that point. Lanning would have been an unknown commodity because he wouldn't have coached a game as a head coach yet that I remember. I would think so.
and it's crazy how far we've come since then, where
Yeah.
we're more talking about Lane Kiffin than we are Dabo Swinney.
Yeah.
And sure, you can say the coaching tree comes from Dabo. Dabo's on the coaching tree, but we're giving more life to Kiffin than we are Dabo. That's kind of mind blowing to me compared to where we were 2 years ago. So I don't know. And I don't think Alabama goes the NFL route. I think you have to have a college coach
Yes.
who has
You
been
cannot go
the
NFL.
last 2 years. And let me rephrase it. Let me say that correctly so folks don't misinterpret. You have to have a college football head coach who's been successful and knows the portal, knows NIL, everything that's happened in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
You got to have a coach that knows how to handle that, not just be a head coach. That's the game changer when it comes to the Alabama position.
And when you put it that way, it's not a long list. Trey, speaking of fatherly duties, they're calling me at the moment. Really appreciate you coming on a moment's notice, and I know we'll catch up when Alabama's hired a coach, if not before.
I look forward to it. Always appreciate it. Craziness in college football. I'm going to go try to take a nap with a juice box, and I look forward to talking again soon, brother.
Get the juice boxes ready, and we'll see you soon. All right, he's Trey Wallace. I'm Chris Lee. This is Southeastern 14, presented by Bet Online.